Hi, this is Andre, and I don't know anything about the Kawasaki KL 500, but I do know how it rides. I missed the entire technical presentation because I was late. But maybe that's actually for the best, because then my thoughts are undisturbed. However, I will also refer to the marketing behind this machine, because in my opinion, it has done the greatest disservice to the Kawasaki KL 500. Because if you look at the Kawasaki website, the promotional videos and so on, you see that this motorcycle is supposedly ready for adventures like the ones you see on Instagram. So we're riding sideways, jumping, doing this and that, basically everything. It's supposedly ready for rallies, practically ready to race, which is the same mistake that perhaps, I don't know, KTM has been making for years, that their motorcycles are supposedly ready to race, but often in the end, they're not, because the KL 500 is not a rally bike. This is not the kind of equipment from which you can build a machine for racing in those adventure classes and so on. Of course, there will be people who will compete on it because they'll get it from the dealer or distributor, change the suspension, everything, the exhaust, mapping, and so on. You can race on anything, but straight out of the box, straight from the showroom, this motorcycle is not the machine for that kind of activity. Is that a bad thing? No. That's a good thing, because 95% or probably 99% of people use these motorcycles normally. They just want to get as far as possible, as safely as possible. And only that last 5% try to show off on them, like we often do as editors, and even more often influencers do. And they basically brag about it on the internet. And because of that, we see it and think, hey, everyone rides like that, so I have to as well. No, you don't have to. Your goal is to explore the world, and in my opinion, the KL 500 will be incredibly well suited for that. First of all, it's a big, imposing motorcycle. Even Brazosa from Moto Voyager, who is probably about 1.90 m or even a bit taller, looks good on this motorcycle, and I'm sure he'll say whether it was comfortable for him or not. For me, the riding position was really spot on. The seat is low and you can stand up comfortably. This motorcycle is nicely built up. You really feel like you're on a full-size machine. It's the opposite with the BMW F 450 GS, which I just recently reviewed. That motorcycle is petite, and let's be honest, it's the same class of adventure motorcycle for the A2 license. So with that one, you can just make your choice directly. If you need a smaller motorcycle because you're a smaller person, then go for the BMW. If you need a bigger, larger motorcycle because you're a bigger person, then choose the Kawasaki. But the differences really start here, because ultimately this motorcycle is on a completely different side of the chart or graph, since if we look at the components and electronics, it basically represents the 1990s. Brake lever, clutch lever. You won't find any adjustments here. Zero adjustments in the suspension. We can only set the spring preload, and from what I see, let me check for a moment. Yes, and we have to use tools for that. So we don't have a knob that lets us quickly adjust it when we load it up with a lot of luggage. The ABS is basic, very simple, works well enough on asphalt, but off-road we turn it off right away. And here Kawasaki is aware of that. There's a button, you have to press it, then hold it, and the ABS turns off both at the front and the rear. Brakes? Honestly, nothing special at all. For calm riding, they're more than sufficient and provide very good feel, especially when riding off-road. Surprisingly good tires from the Indian brand IRC. In my opinion, the biggest advantage of this motorcycle is its geometry and handling character. You know what? Maybe it's finally time to do that comparison test. I always promise comparison tests, but then there's neither time nor money for it, because these days organizing something like that is really not cheap. But maybe that the BMW has super adjustable suspension and so on and so on and so on and so on. But something about the geometry just didn't quite sit right with me. Well, the story is a bit longer because that motorcycle had a straight line setup, but the weather was dramatically bad, so it was set up very softly. So we still need to check that in Poland. But here, first of all, we don't have any adjustments, so there's nothing we can mess up. Secondly, the wheelbase itself, the frame, the geometry, the weight distribution. In my opinion, in this motorcycle, it's just spot on. What does it matter that the suspension is incredibly soft? The ground clearance is low, so when you start riding it fast, the front bottoms out right away, then the rear bottoms out, and then we end up hitting the skid plate on the ground. It was like, even if the bump was that long, it compressed me so much that I actually groaned. You know, the suspension bottomed out quickly, compressed, and all the impact went straight into my knees and lower back, and ouch. An old man. But when we ride this motorcycle slowly, or even not that slowly, just riding dynamically, you can ride it dynamically, but not in a sporty way. You get a great feel for the front grip, a great feel for the rear grip. The riding position is comfortable. You just cruise along and it responds nicely. We really are able to ride it very smoothly and very effectively. Exactly. And I wonder if it got recorded, because sometimes I turn those cameras on and sometimes I don't. There was a guy riding in front of me who was really trying to ride like that. You could tell he was someone with a lot of off-road experience, probably motocross or enduro, working the bike here, here, here. And I was just cruising along, not really doing anything. And in the end, I was going at the same speed as he was. Because that's how you actually ride these kinds of motorcycles in real life. You want to get through the off-road route as smoothly and safely as possible so that, well, the bike doesn't tip over because it's just heavy. And here, for example, that's a big difference. Again, I'm coming back to the BMW because that's what I've been riding lately. Well, that motorcycle is definitely heavier, both on paper and in how it feels. But again, it's a bigger machine. What makes me think that this motorcycle isn't really a base for more ambitious rallies is, above all, the engine. Not because it's bad, but because of its character. I don't remember what kind of crankshaft it has because I missed the technical presentation. I'll check that and write about it in the magazine. But it's a very linear, really nice, easy to handle engine that has quite decent power at the top and good torque, but its character is typically road oriented. It's smooth and gentle at low revs, and to get strong performance, you have to rev it up. What does this mean in practice? Well, it means that when you're riding and you want to do a little brap with the rear wheel at low revs, you know, to slide it out, tighten the turn, and so on. And that brap just doesn't happen because the engine needs to rev up first. And once it finally does, it goes wah and starts losing traction at the back, just spinning the wheel. So if someone knows how to ride 190 kilogram two-strokes, then they can ride all the time with the throttle pinned. Yeah. And it will keep spinning and driving forward and it'll be fine. But for, you know, more moderate dynamic riding or in various conditions like you get in enduro, it's missing that brap, which you have, for example, in a Ténéré 700 or in that GS I was riding. And again, this isn't really a flaw. It could even be an advantage because this motorcycle is an A2 licensed machine, which means it's mostly aimed at people who are beginners or simply don't want anything aggressive. Because if you have a regular motorcycle license and you want something aggressive, you just buy an Africa Twin, a Ténéré, a Touareg, or a KTM 1390 Super Adventure R. In my opinion, the 21-inch front wheel promises a lot, and it's probably proof that manufacturers or someone is listening to people who write online that it has to have a 21-inch wheel. Because whenever you release something with a 19-inch wheel, everyone comments, it's a shame it doesn't have a 21-inch. And I think Kawasaki gave in, just like Honda once did with the Africa Twin, that it has to have a 21-inch front wheel. But in my view, if this motorcycle had a 19-inch front wheel, it would actually be even better, because it would handle even more nimbly on asphalt corners. And for calm off-road riding, it would be more than enough. That doesn't change the fact that a large front wheel means greater comfort. If you happen to find yourself riding along on a rough road filled with many small bumps, then naturally having a large wheel guarantees that you will experience much less shaking of the handlebars. So in this specific case, the large 21-inch front wheel serves a much more comfort-oriented function for the rider rather than a purely sporty one. Overall, when you sit on this motorcycle and look at it, it's very similar to the Yamaha Ténéré 700. I would say it's kind of like a Ténéré 700, just a bit more. Maybe I don't want to offend Gen Z. Like a younger brother whose punch is weaker and who doesn't really feel like doing squats. It fulfills its role in a very, very good way. Up to the point where we don't start expecting too much from it. And when we do start expecting too much, its geometry and weight distribution clearly let us know, hey, now you're overdoing it. If you want, we can try, but as soon as I hit you, as soon as I kick you, you'll be doing somersaults. But I'll probably survive that because, listen, you see, these are important things. The handguards are metal. Everything here is just super solid. It's the typical Japanese school of motorcycle building. It has to be indestructible for 29,900 zlotys. And most importantly, soon you'll hear, oh, this one's Japanese, that one's Chinese, and the BMW is made in India. Here before you is a Thai motorcycle straight from Thailand. There will be more in the magazine. Really a very cool machine. Just don't pay attention to all that marketing because maybe this is simply the machine for you. Bye.